But you know what? It just works. Skarsgård sells the moment.
Oh, dude,
And
it's so good, man. It's so good.
I enjoyed
My
it.
Arrakis, my desert, my Dune.
My
And he
Dune.
just and it just flows up. It's so good.
Hello, friends. I'm Anderson Marchak,
And I'm Ricardo Segura.
and we are the Panel Bros. Welcome to the panel.
Welcome to the panel. Yeah.
Well, here we are.
Here we are.
If you've been tuning in or listening, folks, as of this recording, it's late January 2025. We are getting towards the end of the current filmography of a director we both admire by the name of Denis Villeneuve.
Yes.
We last left off with Blade Runner 2049.
2049, baby.
And we have now arrived at the next movie that we will get started here with. It was released October the 22nd of 2021. Today, the Panel Bros are going to be doing a breakdown for Dune.
Bro, I tried to do the voice. In the beginning. It was like, yeah. I was trying to do the voice. I can't do it. I don't have the right pitch for the voice. Man, this is a movie. And we talked about it with Arrival. I think Arrival was the beginning of kind of showcasing that Denis Villeneuve could do things on a much grander scale. And like each movie started to feel bigger and bigger and bigger. Blade Runner 2049 felt bigger than Arrival. And then you get to Dune, and it's just like he just knocks it out of the park here. I have a close friend of mine who was so eager to see this movie. He's read the books, and he was like, Rick, I can't wait. It looks phenomenal. And I was like, it really does, man. Denis Villeneuve is crushing it. And he was so pleased. He could not stop gushing about this movie when he saw it, just hitting me up like, Rick, it's such a masterpiece. It's so good. Unfortunately, this is one of those movies that I didn't have the luxury of seeing in theaters, but this was because the world was obviously dealing with the shutdown. Right. And we'll discuss that throughout at the end, most likely. But if there's any way that I will ever get an opportunity to see this in a theater, whether it's an anniversary, whether a couple of us rent a movie theater screen, whatever the case may be, I will absolutely jump at the opportunity, because what he crafted here, man, is just on another level.
Yeah, this was during that year. Just a little history lesson, folks. And we refer to this from time to time. Towards the end of 2020, Warner Brothers announced that HBO Max would be available in 2021 with a special added bonus that you would get a dual release of a movie in the theater and then plus at home for HBO Max, because we didn't know when the theaters would be opened up again. And then once the theaters opened up, we didn't know when folks would feel safe to go to the theater again. Yeah. So they did both. So a lot of the movies that were released that year with the dual release, the box office didn't do so well, because of both. But we'll get to that later on. I don't think Dune did that bad, despite the fact that it was released on both. I will say that I took the chance to go. The theater was empty. I can count the amount of people that were in the theater with me on one hand. I remember it. I had my mask on. I was in the back row. There was nobody around me. I just remember it just being loud. It was just such a loud movie that, it was great. It was such a great experience that I went to see it. And then I talked to you about it and such. I was like, hey, listen, you got to see this. And obviously I know you streamed it as well. But Dune was a pretty awesome experience. And it's just good stuff,
It was interesting because as I watched it the first time, I could tell, because I was streaming it, obviously. I could tell, like, just from I watched it with headphones on because I wanted to try to get the best experience that I could, and I wanted to feel it, especially with Denis' sound design and scores and whatnot. I wanted to feel it, and it felt so great. But I can tell, I was like, this is a theatrical viewing experience that I'm missing out on. and I was so upset because I was like, oh man, I would love to go, but my youngest was a baby, so like the idea of going to theater, especially during this time, was out of the question for me. So I watched it, streamed it, and I could just tell, like you said, like it's just loud, dude. Like the first sound you hear is this just like like it's just so
Yeah.
loud and aggressive, and you're like, yes, like let's go, let's get into it. You know what I mean? But I'm excited to talk about this one because this is one of those movies that I think, like, whether it's from a technical standpoint or story and execution and things of that nature, like Denis Craft is something special, man. This is a special one.
So I have a little blurb here. It was announced as Dune, and all the posters, trailers, and stills titled it as Dune. And the truth that it was really a preconceived first part wasn't revealed until the movie was released. And it wasn't until the audience could see in the movie theater, and it was titled Dune Part 1.
Dune Part 1.
So it was like, hi, surprise,
Yeah.
we're going to have well, it wasn't guaranteed. It was just
That was the thing.
how well it did, yeah.
I was very, very, very scared because Dune was so good, and I was like, please greenlight a sequel, please. Because again, we're talking about a much bigger budget, so I was like, please, and obviously big cast. So I was like, come bring them back. I can't wait. I hope they do, and luckily for us, they did.
Yeah. Alrighty, well, let's get started with our plot breakdown here. So we have our opening scene with the vocals there, and we see all the sand flowing and such. We have a young lady that will be revealed later on. She is narrating, and we see this fight between the Fremens and the Harkonnens, and it is over the spice, this valuable commodity here on the planet. The Fremen are hiding in the sand, in addition to being positioned behind guns in like a sniper type position. We see this battle. There's fighting. There's explosions, and then eventually the Harkonnens left. And you're left with this line: why did the Emperor choose this path, and who will our next oppressors be? Because people want the spice so bad. Alrighty. Let's get a screen share here.
It's my cousin, everybody. It's my cousin. Yeah.
Alrighty. So in the distant future, Duke Leto Atreides, played by Oscar Isaac, he's assigned by the Emperor Shaddam IV, who is a character we will not see until part 2, but that will go on to be played by Christopher Walken. He's going to replace Baron Vladimir Harkonnen, played by Stellan Skarsgård, as the fief holder of Arrakis. So let's do a little education here about what a fief holder is. So in the Dune universe, a fief holder refers to a noble from a great house who is granted control over a specific planet known as a planetary fief or Ciridar, by the emperor, essentially acting as the ruling authority over that planet in exchange for loyalty and tribute to the imperial government. So they're the overarching people there. And it's similar to the medieval feudal system, where a vessel held a piece of land, a fief, from a lord in return for service. So it was the Harkonnens, and now it's going to be the Atreides, and that's where we're at.
Yeah.
So Arrakis is a harsh desert planet and the sole source of spice, a valuable psychotropic substance that imparts heightened vitality and awareness. I guess it gives you superpowers in a way.
Yeah, it's like it heightens you a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Spice is also key to interstellar travel, giving space-skilled navigators the ability to guide starships to traverse space instantaneously and safely. Emperor Shaddam, fearful of Leto's rising power, plots for House Harkonnen to retake Arrakis, secretly aided by his troops and secretly aided by his Sardaukar troops and to destroy House Atreides. Atreides, rather, excuse me. Leto is suspicious of the Emperor, but weighs the risks against the power of controlling Arrakis and make an alliance with its mysterious natives, the Fremens. So here we have House Atreides, and they're the new people.
Mhm.
And from the narration in the beginning, we saw that the Harkonnens, they were in charge of this planet, Arrakis. You know, they didn't drive the Fremen out, but it's like, hey, we're the people in charge now, but we're not going to. We're just here for one job, and that's to get the spice. We don't
The
care about you.
spice.
We don't care
Yep.
about you people. So it's almost like, um, uh, I don't want to say enslave them because they didn't really
Mhm.
do that so much. It was just like they were, um, like bullies.
Yeah.
You know,
They
they
could
were.
care less about the people. They're here for the one thing, and it's the spice. And
Right,
that's pretty much it.
and
Yeah.
the Fremens need it too. You know,
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
like, you know, we don't need it, but you know, that's who they were, and then they left. You know, obviously, like you saw, there were battles being fought
Oh
and
yeah.
such. So now the general concern is that House Atreides is coming in here now. Are they going to treat us the same? And of course, Leto and his people, they're nothing like that.
No, not at
So
all.
now the challenge is like he wants to establish to the Fremen people that, hey, listen, we're not like the Harkonnens.
Yeah. And I do love that through the movie we get to see examples of that. We get to see
Yeah.
exactly what Duke Leto is all about. So as the movie goes on, we start to see a little bit more about his character, and he's like, no, he's telling the truth.
Yeah, and you'll see like these glimmer of hope and of positivity in
Mhm.
Oscar Isaac, such a great actor
Oh
for
yeah,
this role,
yeah.
you know. Alrighty. Speaking of good actor, we have another good actor here.
Woo, bro! I'm gonna gas her up later.
Oh yeah, she's great in this.
I'm gonna tell you.
So Leto's concubine, Lady Jessica, played by Rebecca Ferguson, is
Yes.
an acolyte of the is it Gesserit? Ben Gesserit,
Okay.
an exclusive sisterhood whose members possess advanced physical and mental abilities. People actually with superpowers.
Yeah, dude. Like this is pretty sick. I like this.
Yeah. As part of a centuries long breeding program, they instructed her to bear a daughter whose son would become the Kwisatz Haderach, a Ben Gesserit, and messianic super being with the clairvoyance necessary to guide humanity to a better future. So,
Yeah.
in layman's terms, a messianic figure, a woman that could tell the future, basically, is what
Yes.
would happen if if she listened to those directions there. They don't describe how this woman has the power to control the sex of the
No,
child.
no. They're just like you were supposed to have a daughter and you chose to have a son. I was like, what? But look, man, there's some really cool stuff that she's able to do. So I'm not putting it past her that she can do that.
Yeah. So she disobeyed, and she bore a son, Paul, played by Timothy Chalamet,
Mhm.
and he is trained by Leto's aides, Duncan Idaho, Jason Momoa, Gurney Halleck, that's Josh Brolin,
Mhm.
and the Sook Doctor Wellington Yu, played by Chang Chen. Um, the Mentat, the Fur Hawat, uh, played by Stephen McKinley Henderson, is another one of the team, and she teaches him the Ben. Uh, I can't pronounce this right. Is it Ben Gesserit or Ben Gesserit? I think it's a Gesserit or
Yeah,
Jes-
we'll do that. We'll go with that way. It's fine.
all right, that's fine. All right. The disciplines rather. And
Mhm.
Paul confides in Jessica and Duncan about troubling visions of the future. The Reverend Mother, Imperial Truthsayer Gaius, played by Charlotte Rampling, subjects Paul to a deadly Gomjabber test to assess his humanity and impulse control, which
Yeah.
he passes. So,
Yeah.
a bulk of the first half hour of the movie is just dedicated to building Paul's character
Mhm.
and just the training that he's going through, and just we've seen Timothy Chalamet in a lead role
Yeah.
before. We've seen him in decent roles and leading roles, but this is like where it's like, no, this is the guy.
Yeah.
And they dedicated a big chunk of this movie to doing that in the early parts here.
Yeah, like this is a big movie. star-studded cast, and like, yeah, this is on Timothy Chalamet. And like you said, I do like that we're getting this training aspects for Paul, and we're like, we get to figure out what we get to see how the voice works, which is a very interesting thing. And Jessica training him in that regard, him being trained in physical combat as well, and then you have the visions of what's to come. So they're kind of molding him, and him coming forward about these visions that he's seeing, which aren't necessarily the best of visions. And it's kind of like, okay, what does this mean? Like, does this mean things that are going to pass? Like, we don't know this just yet. So I do like that, like you said, and the very beginning is all about building who Paul is and what he's enduring at this time.
So I have here one of the first scenes involving Paul getting trained by his mother is to use quote unquote the voice.
The voice.
Yeah. He has some interactions with Jason Momoa's character and his father, and it seems like him and Duncan have a really nice relationship there. Whenever he sees him, he just lights up, and
oh yeah, big hugs. Like, you can tell, like, it's one of those. It reminds me of like the big brother, little brother kind of deal. Like, because Paul comes off as that little brother, like really excited to see his big bros come home, and he, like, Jason as an actor does that thing where like he bends down, you know what I mean? Like, he gets down to Paul's level, and it's very like older brother like, and he comes and he gives him that big hug and whatnot. So you can tell they have a really good relationship.
Yeah, and if you've seen Jason Momoa outside of films, he's that big huggy guy.
Yeah.
He's a tall guy. He's got some size to him, but just a heart full of warmth there. Just a real huggy guy. So the movie goes on to establish that Paul doesn't feel like he wants to rule as his father did. We move on to another scene in which he's trained in battle by Gurney, and there's a part there where he takes him down, and Paul says, "I have you," and then he says, "Look again, you've joined me in death."
Yeah.
Gurney's establishing how brutal the Harkonnens are, and he's just like, "You need to be ready. We're just training right now, but they're not going to be easy on you. This training is important. You're playing around with me, but you need to understand that, like, these people are just ruthless." So
yeah, like Paul even says, he's like, "I'm not in the mood." And he's like, not in the mood, you know what I mean? Or I'm not in the right mood. And like they're fighting one night. And he goes, "I see you found the right mood. I see you found your mood." And like you said, he's kind of letting him know, like, and we've heard this in, whether it's in other movies or in reality, if you will, like in acts of war, there is no like, "Oh, I'm not in the right frame of mind." It's like, no, it's go, go, go. And you have to understand it. You have to fight in that same way. And I also thought the scene was really, really cool because we get a look at their technology with the shields and whatnot, and how they penetrate those shields when they're in combat, where like if you try to strike too hard, obviously it will be deflected, but if you bring it close enough and you slowly come in, it doesn't register. So that's how you can get a death blow. So I do like we get to introduce that as well, and the type of training that he's dealing with. So this was a fun scene.
yeah. Oh, and we get to see the shields in action.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a cool concept, It's like, oh, you can hit me only a certain amount of times before the shields go down. So
yeah, for anyone who remembers the original Dune movie and what it looked like back then, it's a drastic improvement today of how it looks. It just looks way, way better, obviously, VFX wise.
This leads us to our most intense scene of training for Paul, where he has to put his hand in the box.
Yeah.
So once again, they establish how important the use of the voice is, and she uses it on him to kneel. And then Jessica, she just leaves. She's like, "Nope, you can leave. You don't need to see this." And then we get to find out that he could possibly die from this test, but this is all a part of finding out if he's quote unquote the one. So obviously he gets upset with her, he says, "How dare you use the voice on me? This is royalty, basically, and you just use the voice on him, She's like, "I don't care. This is about the future of our people. So we have to do it this way." She instructs him to put his hand in the box. And if you remove the hand from the box, you die, because she's got a little poison needle to his throat. I put down here, this is some solid acting from Timothy and from Rebecca.
Yes.
He's showing the pain that he's feeling from his hand being in the box. And then you hear all the chanting start, and she, being clairvoyant, she could see it as it's happening. So she's crying too outside the doors, and she's, she understands that if he fails this test, he's going to die. She's going to lose
Yep.
a son. But there's this one moment where he's like convulsing, and then he just like stops and he accepts it.
Yeah.
It's a really cool moment. Could you please share with me your thoughts on that scene there?
Yeah, it's a really good scene, obviously, because they're sharing that experience as mother and son. And just from an acting perspective, it's one of those things where we don't get to see what's happening to
Right.
Paul. We don't see it. And it's all on, as an actor, Timothy's face. So we're watching Paul's expressions, and he's doing a terrific job. And every once in a while, he lets out a guttural sound of pain, and she's like, silence. And he's just holding it in. And you see tears falling from his eyes, and he's fighting it, and he just kind of gets into the right place of mind, and he zens out a little bit. Very, very, very strong scene. And obviously, whatever he felt was very immense pain, just so much pain. And the greatness of the scene, obviously, is that this is royalty. He is royalty, and they are willing to kill him if he fails this test, because they need to make sure that he is in the right frame of mind, that he is that he's humble, and he will handle this the way that it should be handled. Should he act out incorrectly, they will kill him, obviously, because again, the only people that have access to the voice and these abilities that we know of at this point are these women, these very important women. And now she had a son, which is already like, why did we do this? Right. So if he's going to be this leader with these abilities, they have to absolutely make sure that he is going to be, I guess, quote unquote, a good leader, a good person. And if he does this incorrectly, they have to kill him right now. So it's a very strong sequence. But yeah, just from performance wise, him and Rebecca Ferguson do great, obviously, and I'll gas her up throughout the rest of the movie.
Oh yeah.
But it's a very strong and important scene.
I thought about, from an acting perspective, I don't want to say it's easy, but it's easier to play pain if there's like a weapon, like, oh, you're beating me with a bat. Okay. You're punching me. Oh, that hurts. You're stabbing me with a knife, all these other things, it's easier to show pain, but this man just has his hand in a box, and he has to pretend like he is being destroyed with the most immense pain possible from just, I was just impressed by that, with the choices that he made, as far as that goes.
Yeah.
So thankfully he passes. He doesn't die. So that's great. And we move on here. So House Atreides arrives at Arrakeen, the principal stronghold on Arrakis. And he gets this huge welcome. All these people, they're chanting. You're hearing them from the audience say that term that we hear throughout the entire movie now, the Lisan al-Gaib.
Lisan al-Gaib. Lisan al-Gaib.
Yeah. You hear Atreides. And he asks his mom, Lisan al-Gaib, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And she tells him it translates as voice from the outer world. It means Messiah. Clearly, when you say any messianic figure, you're going to connect them,
Yes.
So, we have Jesus as a messianic figure, and of course, Paul here. And they come back to that. They don't shy away from it.
Oh yeah, that's a big common theme that's placed throughout the movie, and how Paul responds to it. That's a big one.
Yeah. Duncan's advance party has made contact with the Fremen, and the natives revere Paul and Jessica, which she explains is due to the Bene Gesserits sowing beliefs on Arrakis centuries earlier. We get this crysknife scene with the lady that's hiding the blade.
Yeah.
This is a great scene.
Yes.
She comes in, and we get to see Jessica use this like sign language.
Yeah.
With the guard behind her. It's like, don't move, but there might be some violence coming.
Yes.
And she tells the lady, I know you're concealing a knife. And she's like, yes, but it is a gift. And she pulls it out. She mentions the Lisan al-Gaib again. And she says the mother and the son. So once again, shades of Mary and Jesus, I guess, Yep.
There's a lot of people who promote prophecy here, and she even asks Lady Jessica, like, what is this? Like, do you know what this is? Which is the test. Like, do you know? And Lady Jessica says it, and she hands it over as the gift, mother and son. So there's a lot of prophecy that's being what's the word? Foretold. And it's a big theme with the movie.
Yeah. Shout out to the actress here when she starts wailing.
Oh yeah.
That was such a great choice.
Yeah.
Uh, uncomfortable, obviously. But that's just her, because these people have been longing for this prophecy to come to pass.
Yes.
And now she believes that this is the mother of the Messiah in front of her right now. She starts wailing.
And she says it like the character herself mentions that, and I can't remember verbatim, but essentially she says that we follow, as you mentioned, we follow this so deeply that when we are presented with it, our normal reaction is almost shock. It's almost like, oh, this is it. Like, this is what we've been foretold our entire lives, and now it is before me, and this is my natural act. It's almost her way of apologizing for having somewhat of a tearful outburst. It's her way of kind of being like, yeah, sorry, this is how we feel when we're faced with what we've prophesied for so long. So yeah, it was pretty great.
Yeah. And there's a moment of doubt where you think that, like, is this an assassination attempt?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
The first time you see it, but then, once you see the lady crying, it's like, oh no, she just can't believe that this is happening. An attempt to assassinate Paul with a hunter seeker fails. At a secret meeting on the Harkonnen planet, Gadi Prime, Mohiam insists Baron Harkonnen spare Paul and Jessica to his coup, to which he agrees. The Baron says, I said I would not harm them, and I shall not. But Arrakis is Arrakis, and the desert takes the weak. My desert, my Arrakis, my Dune.
My Dune. And he does that float up into my Dune. He just like it was memed by so many people of like, I remember watching like people making videos like my Dune, and they would wear like a blanket and they would stand up very slowly. like the imagery of it's insane to see.
Yeah. So they need to come up with a term for this eventually in film, where they say the name of the movie in the movie.
Oh yeah.
But you know what? It just works. Skarsgård sells the moment.
Oh, dude, it's so good, man. It's so good.
I enjoyed
my
it.
Arrakis, my desert, my Dune.
My Dune.
And he just flows up. It's so good.
Yeah, it's great. And once again, we don't explain how this man can fly, but he can.
No, we just like immediately I was like, all right, man, my boy is rolling with a great hoverboard technology here. Like it's that presence. Like he has that presence, right. And they want him to have that leader that he oversees all. So he floats. Yeah, it's pretty epic.
Leto meets and negotiates with Fremen chieftain Stilgar, played by Javier Bardem. So this is
him.
Hilarious scene.
Yes.
So Stilgar comes in, and by the way, this is important because this man is essentially the leader of the Fremens.
Yes.
And the Fremen are the natives of this planet, and they need to be, House Atreides needs to be like, hey, we just need to get along while we're here. We're not the Harkonnens. So this meeting is very important. So Bardem comes in, and after listening for a little bit, he spits on the ground. And everyone's ready to come at him.
Everyone's ready to fight at that point. It's like, yo, bro, what? Like,
and Duncan steps in. Thank you, Stilgar, for the gift of your body's moisture. We accept it in the spirit in which it was given.
It was so funny.
Duncan spits.
Yes.
And then Leto spits. He hawks a loogie, actually.
Yeah,
he's like, spits in return. So let's explain here. Mm-hmm. Apparently, this was not meant to be a joke. It's actually legit.
It works though. It does.
Right.
It made. I remember watching it and chuckling. It's funny.
Yeah. So because they're on the desert, they're dry, and they need all the moisture they can get. Yep. And they even explain later on that the suits that they wear recycle the moisture in their body. So if you sweat, it goes back in and you don't lose any of your moisture at all. It's so interesting. But apparently, I guess if you spit in the company of somebody else, it's a compliment
Yeah.
because you're losing some of your own moisture in this awful, awful weather.
Yeah.
And Denis uses it as an opportunity for a hilarious moment in the movie.
It's very good. And I remember texting you being like, I'm always a fan of directors like Christopher Nolan and Denis Villeneuve, where oftentimes people can say like, oh, like their movies are straightforward and serious. And I'm like, I understand. I said, but they have really, really creative ways of injecting humor that doesn't feel silly or slapstick. It's just the reaction, because obviously there's no mention of this at all prior to it. So when Stilgar spits on the table, anyone would assume that is an offense. Anybody would assume like, oh, this is an offense. Like you have the Duke telling him, here's what has to happen. This is what we're going to do. And Stilgar spits. You're kind of like, oh, that's disrespect. And you see Josh Brolin's character ready to throw down. And I love that Duncan, Idaho is kind of like, oh, wait, thank you so much. Thank you for that great gift of your body's moisture. Does it back.
I'm so glad they gave the line to Jason Momoa too. He's the best person.
He's the perfect person to do that. Because again, it's almost done in a humorous way. And I love that Duke just kind of just goes and then does, just spits on the table.
Yeah,
and
he
like,
hesitates too because Duncan spit first, and then he kind of looks around. He's like, "All right, I guess I got to spit now."
I got to spit back. Yeah.
So this meeting, as we've stated, it's pretty important because Atreides rules here now, and he is paying them a service by promoting not to hunt them or bring ill will to them.
Yes,
he can't promise to not go into the Fremen, and unless duty compels.
Yes,
but he can promise he won't do to them like the Harkonnen instead, and that's what he promises.
Again, this is throughout the movie. We keep seeing how good of a leader Duke Leto is. Like Stilgar's fears are immediately kind of put like, at ease, because he's like, no, we're not going to do that. You are free to live your lives and do what you got to do. I'm going to do what I'm compelled to do, that is required of me as this leader, but I'm not going to do anything to bring you any harm whatsoever. You have my word. And Stilgar is just like, that's very noble of you. Like he is accepting this, and we're having this good moment between these two parties. But again, it's another instance of showing who Duke Leto is as a person, as a leader. And I'm like, I like that throughout the movie. We're seeing more and more of just how good he really is.
They meet the Imperial Judge of the Change, Dr. Kynes, a planetologist who lives among the Fremen. Kynes briefs them on the dangers of spice harvesting and the giant sandworms that travel under the desert and render unwise the use of protective shields. During a flight, they rescue a stranded spice harvesting crew from a sandworm, and Paul's exposure to the spice triggers intense premonitions. So we're going to do a little screen share here and break down the scene.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of action here.
Yeah, and I did want to mention that when she was helping them put on the suits, and I thought this was pretty important too, when they were helping put on the suits, Paul Atreides puts on his suit in a way that was not taught, but it's their way. And she even says it like, oh, you've worn this suit before? And he's like, no, it's my first time. And she goes, who taught you to fold this up? And it's like near the bottom, near her shoes. He goes, oh, I thought that was just the right way to do it. And she kind of mumbles to herself like, he will know our ways, as if he was taught with us and whatnot, something very along those lines. And again, it's this idea of this prophecy, like they're still teasing the idea that he's this Messiah figure and he's going to know their ways without being taught. So this was a cool scene, and we're going to get an even more fun scene with the sandworm scene.
Oh yeah. Alrighty. So they see in the distance the sand coming up, and it's because the sandworm is getting close. And she tells them, no, we can wait because they have enough technology where they can harvest until the very last second if they need to.
Yep.
Unfortunately, one of the anchors malfunctions on the device there, the mechanism. So now it's up to the three ships to extract the crew. The crew is worried about leaving the spice behind, but Leto cares more about saving them.
God, he's so good,
He
bro.
says that. He's like, I don't care about the spice. We need to save this crew.
Yep.
Then Paul essentially gets high from the
Yeah,
spice,
he gets
and he starts getting the premonition. And then I shared this screenshot here. The sandworm shows up. The sand around them starts sinking as the sandworm devours the entire vehicle, extracting the spice as they take off there.
This scene was great. My favorite thing about the scene, obviously, is how Duke Leto reacts to everything.
Yeah.
He's very much in that role. He's piloting his ship, and he's very much in that role of like, we have to do everything in our power to save these people. And they even count the number of workers. How many workers do we have there? And they give the number, and I forget what it is. And he's like, okay. And Paul tells him, like, we can only fit this amount of people per ship. And he's like, I don't care, we'll make it work. Like, he's like, I don't care, we will make it work. And he tells them, I want 7 people per ship, something like that. I want 7 people on each ship. We're gonna get these people out. And like you said, he's like, dude, darn the spice, I don't care. He goes, we got to get these people out. And I love that. Again, we see more and more about who he is as a leader. And it's a great reflection to everyone around him too. Like, they see what he's committed to. Like, he's committed to the people. And the sequence as a whole is just, again, we're talking about scale. And like Denis, just like when you see the sandworm and the sand coming from afar and you feel it, and when you get to see how monstrous this thing is, it's pretty epic looking. I wish I would have saw this in like IMAX or something, man. I can't imagine how great it looked up there.
I want to say I remember them putting this in one of the trailers. Oh no,
Oh yeah,
that's a moment later on. There's a moment later on that they put in the trailer.
It's that real big one. Yep.
Yeah, but pretty cool though that you got to. It didn't come out, but you got to see how large it was because the vehicle, the mechanism, it swallowed it whole.
Yep, like it was nothing, man. And I was like, and that thing was huge. But yeah,
but great scene and gets great action. And all throughout the entire movie, Paul's just getting premonitions left and right. But just excellent scene there, filled with lots of action, rather.
Yeah.
So the next scene, Paul describes his vision of a young Fremen woman that we will get to later on. It's Zendaya. And you're unclear because this woman might be a lover or someone that kills him.
Yeah, we don't know.
We're not sure.
We don't know.
He also tells his mother that she is pregnant, and she is shocked because even she's not sure if she is.
Yeah.
That was interesting too. His clairvoyance is starting to show up now. He's nowhere near his mom, but his stuff is starting to show up. Unfortunately, Yu betrays the Atreides family and disables Arakin's shields, allowing the Harkonnens and Sardauker to invade.
Yeah,
this huge battle.
Yeah, this is a big battle, dude. Again, we talk about scale and scope, and Denis keeps going bigger and bigger.
It's going to be the Harkonnens. They're coming in the middle of the night here. And Yu incapacitates Leto, planning to exchange him for his wife, the Baron's prisoner. And I mentioned the word earlier, but that device with the poison, it penetrated his he didn't have his shield, so it just hit him. And he's kind of like in this paralyzed state. Yu ends up replacing one of Leto's teeth with a poison gas capsule that the Duke can assassinate the Baron with once he gets in his presence, because he plans on trading him for his wife.
Yeah, like it's an interesting position because he's obviously like, hey, I had to do this to protect my wife, but I'm going to give you this to allow you to take them out as well. And it was just like, he's in a crappy situation.
Yeah. This is followed by a scene where Duncan pursues Paul and Jessica, who are being kidnapped. He's also trying to save. No, he's just pursuing the people that have kidnapped Paul and Jessica here. He goes through several soldiers and eventually makes it to a ship. Like, it's awesome scene. You get to see what a great warrior Duncan is, and obviously Jason Momoa sells the action there. Though the Baron has arranged to have Paul and Jessica drop deep in the desert to die, a compassionate you has left them with a Frem kit with survival supplies. Jessica uses a Bene Gesserit technique called the Voice that we've mentioned to overpower and kill their captors. So during the scene, while Paul and Jessica are being kidnapped, Paul uses the Voice on the Harkonnens to remove his mother's gag. That's because she's the more powerful at the Voice than.
Yep.
And they don't understand that he has the powers too, so they didn't have to gag him.
Yeah,
you know?
they didn't get, because again, it's the women who carry this trait, and they know Lady Jessica has it. And it's funny because he's attempting to do it, and like she's using her sign language, being like, no, you're not ready. And he tries it and it doesn't work. He ends up getting smacked for it. And she's like, find the right pitch, find it. And when he's able to say, remove her gag, it's on, man, because she's extremely powerful.
It's great. This is the first time he's been successful in doing it, and she is more versed, so she's able to tell them to do whatever she says. And
Yep.
she's just like, untie my binds, kill him, throw him out. Like it's just left and right. Just
yep. Give me your knife. Fra, fra. She's taking everybody out. Yeah.
Eventually, we get to a scene here where the Baron double crosses and murders you.
Yeah.
And what did he say? He said, I said you would join your wife, and you will join her in the afterlife. Psh, gets rid of him.
He's like, I told you I would set her free. So join her, be free. And he ends up taking his life. And it just goes to show you again how cruel the Baron is.
Right.
Just nonchalantly eating, bragging to the Duke how great his kitchen is, like food is, as he knows he's essentially cost the lives of many people with this war and whatnot. And yeah, he ends up taking you as well. And it's kind of just like, you're terrible.
I'd like to say the Baron character is almost like shades of the Roman Caesars that would overindulge and eat just from morning till night, which is why he was so big.
Yeah, he's a big boy.
Yeah. So you gets double crossed. Leto ends up releasing the gas. He bites down on the tooth, killing himself and the Baron's mentat, Peter de Vries. This is David Dastmalchian.
Yeah.
And but the Baron survives. And I put here question mark by jumping on the ceiling. Did he use his flying powers that happened earlier? We don't know.
We're not really entirely sure, because he does put on his shield, right? He puts on the shield just in case Duke has some sort of weapon that he's not familiar. Even though the Duke is completely nude. He's completely nude, so that way there would be nothing. But the Duke is whispering because his strength is very low. And the Baron kind of he taps like his ring, and the shield goes up, and he gets close, and he bites down the tooth, and it breathes. But you see the shield go red, which means there's imminent danger, like something is trying to penetrate. And because it's something in the air, it does end up getting through. But yeah, like when you see him on the ceiling, you're kind of like, okay, so he's got the shield, and I guess he created enough distance from whatever was put into the air. Not everybody else, though. Everybody else, man, the people slam the doors behind them.
Oh yeah,
and everyone else in the room is just dead within seconds.
Dropping left and right.
Yeah. As far as the Duke knows, he took out the Baron. He has no idea. As far as he knows, he took everybody out.
So Leto ends up killing everybody in the room. He gives his life as a way to hopefully save his people by getting rid of the Baron.
Yeah.
Even though he betrayed them, you was hoping that this plan would work.
Yeah.
He's saying, all right, I'm going to end up giving the Duke over. Unfortunately, he might die, but all right, listen, I can't stop this from happening, but maybe you can take the Baron out with your last act of your life, And unfortunately, none of that works out. You gets killed, and Leto gets killed trying to take the Baron. He takes a lot of his people out, but he didn't take the Baron out, and that was the main reason for it. And unfortunately, we have a lead character death. I want to say at least halfway through the movie.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was bummed, bro. I was
Yeah.
bummed. Listen, I didn't read the books, and obviously, I didn't know what route Denis was going to go with things. So I was upset. I was like, "Oh no, we lost Duke Leto. We lost Oscar Isaac." I was bummed, but he went out. He went out on his shield, so to speak, saying like, "No,
Yeah.
I'm gonna do it this way."
Overnight in the desert, Paul, surrounded by spice, has visions of a bloody holy war fought
Oh
across the
yeah,
universe in his name.
yeah, dude.
The vision is incredible. We see the Fremen woman again, Zendaya,
Mhm.
and once again, just great acting from Timothy and Rebecca, because he's having the vision right in front of his mom,
Yeah,
and they're both crying, and he's saying, "Everybody's shouting my name. I don't know what's happening, you know,"
mhm.
and she's guiding him through it. Like once again, another great acting scene between these two.
Yeah, and it's so sad. It's scary because obviously he doesn't know what this means, but they're getting more clear. And the idea that he understands from the visions that there is a holy war being fought across the universe in his name. I couldn't imagine the weight of that. He doesn't know how it's going to come to be. He doesn't know if this is something he can prevent. But the idea that he's having these visions of, because let's be real here, if we're talking about a holy war among the universe and all over the universe, we're talking about countless deaths in his name. Holy wars fought in his name, which is ultimately probably something at this point in his life is not even considering. He doesn't want to be this type of a leader. He doesn't want any wars fought in his name. And yet he's seeing that possibly shall pass, to the point where he absolutely yells at his mom, even using the voice.
Yes.
He uses the voice on his mom. You did this to me. Like, it's just like, oh man, like I couldn't imagine what he's feeling in that moment.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Duncan and Kynes find Jessica and Paul, so they get reunited there because they're in the middle of the desert of the night. They don't know if they're going to survive this, you know. But they find them, and Paul discloses his plan to marry one of Emperor Shaddam's daughters to avert a potential civil war arising from the Emperor's betrayal. They are discovered by Sardaukar soldiers armed with a gun, and Duncan sacrifices himself, enabling Paul and Jessica's escape. So we got another great scene
Yeah.
of Duncan fighting off the soldiers. He's going through these people left and right,
Yeah, dude.
just right through the hallway there. Um, Jason Momoa just bringing it. Just another
Yeah.
great scene.
This was another scene, man. I was bummed. I was like, dude, we just
Yeah.
lost Duke Leto and we're losing Duncan Idaho. And I'm not going to go too far into the future, but we've seen visions where Duncan Idaho is alive in Paul's visions. So when this happened, I was like, how? Wait. And I said the question, like, is he dead? Is he not dead? Like, what are we gonna, again, I did not read the books. I don't
Right.
know what's gonna happen. But I remember at this scene when Duncan Idaho is fighting all these soldiers, and you kind of see the writing on the wall that he's there's just too many. Like, he's taken so many out, but there's just too many, and the numbers game was against him. And I think he knew that too. He gives his salute goodbye. He rings the blade up to say bye to Paul. And Paul knows, and Paul screams no, runs to the door, but it shuts in front of him, I should say. So we do lose Duncan Idaho, but at the first time I was watching it, I was kind of like, wait, but he's in the visions. What does that mean? Maybe we'll find
Right.
out later.
So he is impaled with a sword, and they mistake him for dead. And while they're using the laser gun to cut a hole in the door, he rises up behind him, pulls the sword out, and kills more of them
Yep.
as they are trying to open the door. But eventually they get to him, one too many, you know. And but Paul and Jessica get away. Kynes also tries to escape, but is caught and mortally wounded. She does lure a sandworm to her location to devour herself and the Sardaukar.
Yeah.
So we have another appearance of the sandworm,
Yeah.
just this time eating a few people, taking it down with her. I put down here she uses what's called a thumper, and
Mhm.
it's this interesting device that's it sends a pulse into the sand, and the sandworms can hear, and then they come towards it. That's going to play a part later on here.
Oh yeah.
After conquering Arrakis, Baron Harkonnen appoints his nephew, Raban, played by your boy, Dave Bautista.
Yeah, man. I like Dave. I like Dave.
Yeah. He appoints him to oversee the planet and orders him to restart spice production to recoup the invasion's cost. I have another question mark here. Baron's just such a weird character, man.
Oh yeah, very much.
So he's in this, I put this down, a black tar bath,
Yeah,
I
well, they
guess.
say like the nurse. I would assume it's a doctor or a medical staff of some kind, where she does mention he's not fully healed yet. So obviously he took some damage from whatever Duke Leto used. But yeah, it's just this tar bath. Like I don't know how it works. It's not explained to us.
Nope.
We just kind of understand.
Right.
Okay, this has got some healing properties and whatnot. But yeah, like he just comes out and it just looks like super villain. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
absolutely. They close the scene with Batista's character asking him, and the Fremen, and just lays it out. Kill them all.
Yep, that's it. I was like,
Yeah,
good
we're
lord.
done. Alrighty, so here's that epic scene that I talked about before with the sandworm.
Woo. This part, yeah, dude. They
Wild.
teased it like, my god, man. Like again, just Denis Villeneuve just crushing it. And this was again, dude. I'll say it over and over. I wish I saw it in the theaters because like this would have been epic to see.
This was great to see. They put this in the trailer, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So they have this like sand walk. It's a silly part where they have to walk a certain way so the sandworm
Yeah.
doesn't catch them. But after an almost failed sand walk, where a sandworm comes up from behind them and stops face to face with Paul, someone saves them due to setting off a thumper. The
Mhm.
sandworm comes right out of the sand. I'm gonna stop the sharing here. The
Mhm.
sandworm comes right out of the sand behind them, and Jessica makes it safely past the sand, but Paul's still there. And he turns around and he's just face to face
Yeah.
with this sandworm. And for a minute, you're thinking, is it because he's the Lisan al-Gaib that the sandworm stopped?
Mhm.
And then they revealed that the thumper's the thing that
Yeah.
essentially saved their
Again,
lives.
it's such an interesting thing because Denis is he's tiptoeing, right? Like again, we're getting prophecies, we're getting this idea, but it's like, are we buying into it? Is it real? Is it not real? So when you have this moment where the sandworm is face to face with Paul and it just stops, you're kind of like, why is it stopping? Like, what's going on here? Like, and Jessica, and they're kind of just like, what's going on? And then the thumper happens, and again, it leaves just enough doubt in your mind for those few seconds. It's like, did it stop for Lisan al-Gaib, or is it something else? And then there's a thumper that kind of lures it away, and you're like, oh, okay, interesting.
Great reveal of the sandworm. Clearly, this is a CGI
Mm-hmm.
element of the movie. And, it's an old movie trope, less is more. And it works because we only
Yeah.
saw the sand come up. We saw just the mouth,
Mm-hmm.
devour, but we didn't see the actual scope of this
Yeah.
creature and how big it's going to be. And just an incredible shot. And you hear the score swelling in the background, and you could see the sandworm breathing and
Yeah.
all the teeth on the inside. Just such a cool scene.
Yeah, dude. It looks phenomenal.
Yeah. Righty. Yeah, I wasn't going to go the whole time without doing a screenshot of Zendaya. Of course I had
Yeah,
to.
she's here. She's here. She's here.
Just like in the movie where she doesn't really show up till the end. Here
Yep.
she is at the
Yep.
end of our
It's not
breakdown.
until the end of the movie. Yep.
So, deep in the desert, Paul and Jessica encounter Stilgar's Fremen tribe, where they argue about him being the one, and they have a brief scuffle with them. They don't realize that Lady Jessica can fight too,
Oh
and
yeah.
she reveals that here. They finally meet Channi, Zendaya, the young woman from Paul's visions, and the screenshot I shared was from the actual visions here. Paul's freaking out here
Oh yeah.
because he's now seen this woman that he's been having visions, and later on, while there's a holy war
Mhm.
being fought, concerning him, this woman's still by his side.
Yeah.
So now he's seen somebody that could potentially be a part of his future, and he's like, whoa, this is understandably, he's
Yeah.
freaking out.
It starts to authenticate his visions as a reality. Like it's like,
Right.
uh-oh. Like, no, this might actually be happening.
Right. So, apparently, one of the tribesmen, Jameis, he wants to
Mhm.
challenge Paul.
Oh yeah.
So Channi, she's helping Paul get ready for the fight. Well, he was going to challenge Lady Jessica, and I guess it's because she took down the leader. So
Yeah.
now, as a part of the tradition, somebody can challenge the person that did that. I don't really understand it
Mhm.
too much. And everyone's getting a little worried unless somebody stands up in her place. And of course, he stands up in place. He's not going to let his mom fight their best
Yep.
warrior, so to speak. Channi's talking to him, and she says to him, I don't believe that you are the Lisan al-Gaib.
Mhm.
He is staring her right in the face as she's saying this. You can tell he wants to tell her about the visions. And as she asks him, he just says, never mind, before going on to a fight that he could potentially
Yeah.
lose and die.
Yeah.
So they hint at it, obviously, and just a great moment from Timothy Chalamet just selling the moment.
Mhm.
Imagine, clearly, I guess you can deduce from the visions, oh, this is my future wife
Yeah.
that's in front of me right now,
Yeah.
and I may not live to tell her.
Yeah.
So that's not an easy conversation to have. So the best he can come up with is, listen, guess what? Lisan al-Gaib or not, he's just another bumbling guy. you know
Yeah, especially in that moment, like she doesn't believe he's Lisan al-Gaib, and like for him to sit there and try to drop something so heavy, like, well, actually, I've seen you before today. I've
Right.
had visions of you, numerous visions of you, what's going to happen, Holy Wars, and you by my side. Like that's a lot to drop, and it's just like,
And
never mind,
never
never
mind.
mind, never mind. No, you know what I mean? Again, it's another thing that can be taken
Right.
very humorously, and
Right.
it's not beaten over your head or silly or ridiculous, but just very much like she's like, I don't believe you're this Messiah. I don't believe you're this individual. And he has a whole bunch of things he can unpack right now, but this is not the time nor the place. And he's like, all right, never mind. I got to go fight this guy over here. Never mind.
So we come up to our ending sequence here, where we have Javier Bardem just perched there, watching everything.
Yeah.
So despite Stilgar's lenience toward them, the Fremen warrior Jameis challenges Paul to a ritual duel to the death, which Paul wins. And this is how we start ending our movie here.
Yeah.
Paul takes him down just several times, knife to the throat. Do you yield?
You yield.
And they ask the mom what happened, and she says Paul has never killed a man before.
It's so interesting because Stilgar believes that Paul is playing games because they're like you said, Paul has him dead to rights numerous times and he doesn't do it. And he's like, do you yield? And Stilgar is like, he even mentions like he's not familiar with our ways. This is not how these end. This only ends in death for someone. And it's like, oh, and he's still like blade to the neck, da da da, blade to the neck, da da da. Like he's got this guy dead to rights, and he's like, "Do you yield?" And she's like, "It's not that. He's not playing games. He's never killed someone before." And I'm like, "Oh, buddy, oh, buddy."
Yeah. So, contrary to Jessica's wishes, Paul joins the Fremen, determined to fulfill his father's goal of bringing peace to Arrakis. This happens after he wins the battle. He kills Jameis, and then they go on their way. And that's our movie.
Oh yeah,
So, the movie has been so epic, and Denis chooses to end the movie in an intimate atmosphere here
yep,
of bringing things back down, because you know what? It was so big. There were so many big moments. And you know what? I'm going to choose a soft moment to end the movie. He's
yep,
going to meet Channi. They're going to have this. I mean, it's a fight, where he could
yeah,
potentially die, but it's just going to be a moment where maybe the Fremens may start buying into the fact that he's the Lisan al-Gaib, the ones that are, on the fence, like Channi,
mm-hmm.
and just Like, and hopefully this is enough for you folks that you know, you'll tell your friends to come see this movie, and then
Yes.
hey, there's a lot more, you
Yes,
know.
there's more coming. The movie does a great job. Like we've often seen movies that are setting up a sequel where when you watch them on their own, you could feel like it doesn't feel like a complete movie. I've heard that from some people. Like they're like, "Oh, do you ever see that movie blank blank blank?" And it's like it doesn't feel complete because you can tell they're setting up two. I never really got that feeling from Dune. Like it gives you just enough that it doesn't feel incomplete. It just you know that the scope is so massive. It's so big. And we're getting a lot of information. Like, let's be real. If you are not familiar with Dune lore, there is a lot to process in the movie, whether it's the spice, the cultures, the different tribesmen, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, you're introducing a lot here. So it does work in a sense where like he's giving you a lot of stuff to absorb and he's giving you just enough. And you do feel like when the movie's over, that hopefully you're ready for more. You're ready to continue the story. And like you said, it ends on more of an intimate note. We've seen giant battles in this movie, like giant big battles, great visual effects, and it ends on this like very small scale fight, but just between these two individuals with nothing but a blade. And then they move forward and they're like, all right, this is the next step we're gonna take, and we're gonna go, and it just ends. And I remember being like, oh, what a ride, dude. Like it's just so good.
So let's give our initial thoughts here. And obviously, we touched on it already that um, this is just a movie that it's just meant to be seen in a movie theater. You know,
Yeah, dude, 100%.
it's I mean, we can both recognize its greatness
Mhm.
without the movie theater, but it is meant to be seen in the movie theater.
Yeah.
As I was watching this, and I don't want to use hyperbole too much, but the thoughts of world building came to me when I
Yeah.
saw this. And it wasn't a remake. It's because the movie has been done before and there was like a TV series type deal. It's somebody else doing their vision from the books.
Mhm.
And um, for me, as I was watching it, I just felt like we were building something, just something bigger. And um, not too often I felt that, you know, over the past couple decades here. Obviously, Lord
Oh,
of the
yeah.
Rings. Lord of the
Yeah.
Rings did an incredible job of world building. They introduced so many different concepts and such. I think the Harry Potter universe did a good job of world building and such. But for me, just another just sci-fi um, universe here that I feel like it did a good job of world building because technically speaking, regardless of what's come before, this was meant to be just movie one of
Mhm.
something that might be bigger. And wow, what a great job Denis did in building this world. You know, we have the concept of the Lisan al-Gaib, you know,
Yep.
the messianic figure. We have you know the Bene Gesserits. You know, we have the superpowers
Oh,
left and
yeah.
right. We've got this larger than life villain, both physically and figuratively speaking. You know, um, we've got the Fremen people. We've got the spice. You know, they all have blue eyes
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah,
because
yeah.
of the spice. Um, and to top it all off, we got this giant sandworm. Like like what a world that was being built. You know, so Ricardo, please share with us your reactions to this world building.
Yeah, I think world building is a very important aspect of these movies because, you know, there's themes in this movie that we have seen before, that we've seen explored. The movie covers politics, it covers war. You have the idea of a resource between multiple nations fighting for the resource, willing to take out an entire fleet of people for said resource. These are things and elements that we've seen in other movies and sometimes in reality. So you have those things that are very familiar to us, but he brings us into a new world with those elements. So we have a bit of comfortability in understanding these certain elements, but in a world we've never been before. And it's great because, as you mentioned, like there are a few IP in this world, a few stories where they have massive world building. Lord of the Rings was a big one. Obviously, when people talk about IP and world building, Star Wars is one of
Of
those big
course.
pop culture phenomenons that is just still going to this day. And I'm always very, very happy to feel like I got to be a part of something's beginnings. Star Wars originally came out, I wasn't born yet, so I didn't discover Star Wars essentially till later in my life, where I could really start to appreciate them as movies. When I saw things very young as a kid, like they're just fun movies, but when you get older and watch, you can kind of see the world building. So I appreciate when we have an opportunity to kind of see something built from the ground up. Some people may argue like Avatar is a new version of that, where people now are kind of growing up with Avatar, Lord of the Rings, the Harry Potter franchise. Dune is one of those franchises that I'm very grateful that I'm like, ooh, we get to be here from the beginning and see the world built up. We're not jumping into it years later with, some information here and there. Again, I've never read the books. I understand that they could be quite dense. I've had friends who read those books. I was like, Rick, there's a lot to be read in these things. And to my knowledge, he did a really good job of translating from the books to the film. I'm sure some things are left out. It's always going to be the case. But in terms of world building, I think he did a phenomenal job. Initial viewing, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, I could tell right away that this is a theater watch. I didn't get the opportunity to do so. So on my initial viewing, it being a streaming movie for me, with headphones on, I could still appreciate the movie as a whole. And even though I'm watching it on a regular size screen, I could still tell that the scope of this movie is humongous. Like, this is a huge scale movie, and just visually pleasing, score, everything else just comes together. And it felt like a movie that, and many directors have this, you can tell from their filmography, they've just been building up and building up and building up. And this feels like everything that Denis had done up to this point was building up for this type of execution in the movie. And even though I didn't get to see it on the big screen, I could still tell that from just watching it in the format that I watched it. So initial viewing wise, yeah, I think, world building was excellent. And I think Denis, if up to this point, Denis hadn't solidified himself as a director to keep your eye on, I think he did prior to Dune. But if he hadn't done it yet, Dune was absolutely that movie to kind of push it over the edge for you.
For me, I enjoyed it in the movie theater because it was just such an incredible experience. But the rewatches at home, I've enjoyed this movie more with the rewatches at home because I had a chance, because it's so much to take in.
It's a lot.
What is it? I want to say 2 hours, 40 minutes, something like that.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely close on the 3-hour mark.
Yeah, very close. So at home, I just got to just take it in. I'm just like, man, just attention to detail. Even something as simple as the voice, just making it seem just epic.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take a look at the box office here and also the Oscars.
Oh yeah.
So Dune's budget was 165 million. We'll talk about how they were able to keep the budget. That's kind of low when you think about
it. Is I was going to say that
what they were able to do with the cast they had.
I was going to say that. Yep.
Yeah.
Considering what they did budget wise, cast, scope, is like that's cheaper than I thought.
Right. So despite the fact that it came out while the world situation was happening, and so competing with that, plus they had a dual release on HBO Max, Dune still ended up making 407 million.
Okay.
So a little over 2 times, but they were hoping for a lot more. These epic science fiction action movies, they hope for them to be, I don't want to say 1 billion, but pretty close to it to be considered a success. And unfortunately, it didn't get there, unfortunately. However,
again, it was battling a same-day release as a streaming. Right. A lot of people took advantage. A lot of people did.
Right. However, Dune went on to make some noise at the Oscars the following year. 10 nominations with the Oscars here.
Yeah, baby. That's what I'm talking about.
Nominations. So the 4 that they didn't win were Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Costume Design, Best Makeup and Hairstyling, and yes, it was nominated for Best Picture.
Absolutely should have.
Yes.
Like it should have. And to go back to your point of saying like you enjoy it more in the rewatches, and that happens because I like you said, we're trying to absorb so much that we naturally have the inclination to, we're watching a movie, being introduced to new things, we start to question, okay, so why can they do this? So why? Okay, so why? But when you watch it in your rewatches, you already have a lot of this information, so you're able to absorb everything else much better. So knowing that it was nominated for Best Picture, haven't seen. I've seen this movie 3 times. I've seen it 3 times. Because like you said, it is on the longer end. But I have seen it 3 times, and I'm so happy that it was nominated for Best Picture. Absolutely deserving of it.
Right. And it does like a Mad Max in that it just wins all these technical awards. And I remember we were watching the Oscars, and every single it was like Dune,
Dune.
Dune,
Yup.
yeah,
I
the
was like,
winners.
yeah, baby, let's do it.
So it won Best Visual Effects, Best Original Score, Best Cinematography, Best Production Design, Best Film
Yeah.
Editing, and Best Sound. 6 technical awards out of 10 total Oscars. So not bad.
Yeah.
We have a blurb here. Composer Hans Zimmer, there's that name. He got his 11th Oscar nomination for Best Musical Score for this movie, and it earned him the second Oscar of his long career, 27 years after The Lion King in 1994. He wasn't at the Academy Awards ceremony to collect it personally because he was giving a series of concerts in Amsterdam. So cast member presenter Jason Momoa accepted the award on his behalf.
Nice.
Dune is the 6th science fiction film to win the Academy Award for Best Cinematography, after Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Avatar, Inception, Gravity, and another Denis movie, Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah, baby. That
So,
dude is again, and through his filmography alone, you can see it. Like you can see the cinematography it just shines. It gets better and better each go.
yeah. And I had a thought about this. So this was the 2022 Oscars. That's the year that they got put on. It feels like after that year of Mad Max getting nominated for all those Oscars, that was like it was released in 2015, so the 2016 Oscars. I feel like maybe that's when the Academy started opening up more the genre films again.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Yeah,
Genre films were nominated. Don't get me wrong. Like Inception got nominated, like all these movies over the years. But Mad Max was a blockbuster.
Yeah,
And it took home a lot of Oscars that night too. But I felt like ever since Mad Max, the Academy's been more open to genre films being nominated and winning as well. So, kudos to George Miller's Mad Max, but don't want to take anything away from Dune just winning all these awards and such.
yeah. Because it's great to acknowledge that these genre films exist, and even though it may not be something that the Oscars are necessarily pushing as often as they could, it's great to know that they're looking at these movies and starting to appreciate like the technical achievements of these movies. Like there's so much that goes into making these movies, man. And like cinematography for some people, it's just like, oh, it just looks good, right? Like that in layman's terms, like, oh, it just looks good. And I was like, it's such a difficult task. Like there are times, and I'll use this movie as an example, there are times where I'm seeing certain things and I'm like, never in a million years would I ever be able to come up with that frame. I would never, I don't have the eye like that. I could not come up with those shots, that cinematography, et cetera, et cetera. And I am so grateful that these movies are able to be looked at now and be taken into account, where, like you said, genre films would get nominated for many different things, but you felt like few and far between, if that makes any sense. And then Mad Max Fury Road came out and kind of just kicked the door down. It was just kind of like, bam, this. And you're like, yeah, like they're acknowledging that like this genre film, this blockbuster movie, summer blockbuster, was like, yeah, but like think of all the technical things that it did that were brilliant. And it's kind of hard to ignore all the brilliant things that Dune did. Again, that's why when we talk about like what it's like visually to watch it, the sound design, the score, the original score, and just how it looks, it's like you're crafting something from so many different areas that come together so great, and they just flow that it's kind of, you can't ignore it. So I'm happy that it got acknowledgement and won as many awards as it did for technical achievements.
Composer Hans Zimmer, excuse me, we're going to get into a little bit of trivia now.
Yeah.
For Dune. Composer Hans Zimmer is a big fan of the novel Dune, and turned down working with frequent collaborator Sir Christopher Nolan on Tenet to score this film. For the same reason, although Denis was the top choice to direct the Bond film No Time to Die, he also turned down that offer. So Denis was like, I'm not going to do Bond. I want to do Dune. Zimmer, sorry, Nolan. Tenet sounds great,
Yeah.
but I have a chance to work on Dune. So adapting Dune for the big screen has been a lifelong dream for Denis Villeneuve. Ever since he learned about David Lynch's cult classic Dune in 1984 from the magazines Fantastic Films and Starlog, and read Frank Herbert's novel when he was around 12 years old. He wanted to make a faithful adaptation, so he waited until he'd done the science fiction films Arrival in 2016 and Blade Runner 2049 in 2017 first, so that he would have sufficient experience in the genre before starting work on this film. In fact, scenes from his prior films are strongly influenced by his interpretations of scenes from the novel. So Denis, this is a movie he's been wanting to do for a very long time, but he had to get himself ready before getting there.
I love that.
He did these 2 science fiction films to get himself ready before he got there. So we don't know. The studio might have been ready.
Yeah.
But he said, no, I want to do these films first. And look at how it worked out.
That's it shows you how great of a director he is, because I don't want to say someone who doesn't look at the craft as Denis does. I don't want to say that because it kind of sounds negative, but I will say, you give a director an opportunity to make his dream movie, to make her dream movie, to make their dream movie. Some of them might be like, let's go. Like, this is my dream. Who knows if this opportunity is going to stay with me? Who knows, if it's not going to get canceled or rescheduled. But I love that Denis as a filmmaker was like, I want to get my craft where it needs to be to make sure that I put out the best Dune I could possibly put out. And I think that's a testament of a great director, because obviously, again, like, could have easily been like, all right, let's go for it. Let's do it. But the fact that he's like, oh, like, no, I'm gonna make Arrival. I'm gonna make Blade Runner 2040, and I'm so grateful that he did, because Arrival is a masterpiece, and Blade Runner 2049 is one of my favorite movies ever. So and that's why I think you see the trajectory in the films. I think that's why you see it. You see him slowly taking little pieces here and there and incorporating it in Dune, and it's hard to not see it.
At one point, Sir Peter Jackson expressed interest in directing a new film adaptation of Dune. So that would have been interesting, because people love the Lord of the Rings franchise, and Lord of the Rings would not be where it is if not for Jackson adapting Tolkien's material. So he would have jumped from one franchise to another. That's okay. We got Denis instead, you know? Despite Denis Villeneuve's displeasure at the film being concurrently released on HBO Max as well as cinemas, it was the most watched film overall in the US on the streaming service for the first 3 weeks of its release. People just kept tuning in.
Word of mouth, man. People were like, you got to watch. Again, I told you, I had a buddy of mine. He could not stop talking about Dune. And I was so happy for him, because I know what it feels like to anticipate a movie and just absolutely love it. So I'm so happy for him. And that's great. It means word of mouth. People were watching it. People were getting the word out, and they were just like, they took advantage of it. So I'm happy for him.
So we talked about the budget before and having this large cast. And when that happens, the cuts are probably going to come from the cast, because they want to work on the movie. The entire cast took large pay cuts to work on this film. Timothée Chalamet, Rebecca Ferguson, Oscar Isaac, Jason Momoa, Stellan Skarsgård, Josh Brolin, Dave Bautista, and Zendaya were paid a grand total of only $8 million. All those actors.
Bro, that's insane. Do you understand we're at a time where you can have an actor get paid $200 million for a picture? You know what I mean? And like that cast, and again, that's a testament to wanting to work with Denis Villeneuve, wanting to work on this type of project. And I love when actors do that, man. I do. I really, really do, because sometimes the craft or the project can be so important, and that you just absolutely want to be a part of it. So the fact that you named off all those names and you get up to 8 million,
Yeah.
that is insanely low for that cast lineup.
So it says here everyone except Chalamet, Batista, and Momoa were paid under 1 million. So almost everyone was paid under 1 million. So now how Nolan gets his large casts versus his budget,
Absolutely. And
because
we
once
talked about that. Yep.
they see that name, Christopher Nolan. So these people, they probably were following Villeneuve because he made a few movies up until then, but then they saw the name Dune and they said, "Oh
Yeah.
man, a Dune movie with Denis, sign me up. I don't care
Yep.
what I get. I need to be in this movie." So
Yep.
kudos to the cast.
Nolan is that guy, man. Like, I remember when they announced the cast for Oppenheimer, and I'm like, is this
Right.
going to be the most expensive movie ever made? And it was like opposite. I'm like, how? And I love that we have more than one director like that now. I like that we have more than one director that actors are willing to take a pay cut. And then obviously, like you said, the combination of Dune along with Denis, kind of hard for anybody to pass up.
So let's take a moment to show some love to the cast here.
Yeah.
Of course, we have Timothy Chalamet as Paul Atreides. We have Rebecca Ferguson as Lady Jessica. Oscar Isaac as Duke Leto Atreides. Josh Brolin as Gurney Halleck. We have Stellan Skarsgård as Baron Vladimir Harkonnen. And I wanted to explain a little bit about the Baron here. Apparently, Denis saw Baron as a rhino in human form, and Skarsgård had to spend 7 hours a day applying makeup for his role as the Baron. So he's not that large, so they had to put all that stuff on him, and then just that that unique look there. Dave Bautista as Robin, the nephew of the Baron. We have Sharon Duncan Brewster as Dr. Kynes. I mentioned Stephen McKinley Henderson as Thufir Hawat, Zendaya as Channi, Chang Chen as Dr. Yu. We have Charlotte Rampling as the Reverend Mother Mohim, Jason Momoa as Duncan Idaho, Javier Bardem as Stilgar, and our boy David Dastmalchian as Peter DeVries. We have a blurb about Dastmalchian here. This is the third time that David Dastmalchian is killed in a Denis Villeneuve movie, after being in Prisoners in 2013 and Blade Runner 2049 in 2017. So it's a third time collaboration between him and Denis.
I love it.
And let's take a peek here. All right, that's it for the cast that I want to mention here. This will be our chance to talk about Rebecca Ferguson for a second, because we have to.
Absolutely.
I'll let you talk about her. I gush about actresses all the time on here, because I have just a respect for women actors because of what they bring to the table. But this was the movie. This is no shade to Timothy Chalamet, and it's probably because he looks so young.
Yeah.
He's been a big supporting character in movies. He's played leading roles, but this is where he was the lead. And we're used to seeing actors that look a little older playing the lead, if it's not like a movie geared towards teens, so to speak, And no shade to him. Apparently the character is supposed to be a teenager, and he's in his mid to late 20s playing a teenager. That's fine. But it's almost like, well, he's been around for some time now. He's still a little young. I hadn't seen too much from him, but this was the movie where I started like seeing a little bit more. And I'm like, and I don't want to give away too much about Dune Part 2, but because that's where I feel like he really brought it. But
I agree.
Yeah, but this movie, it was just like, there were like glimpses of, okay, Timothy Chalamet might be that guy, but we need to, it's like, I talk about that scene with the box, and then the other scene where he's having the visions with his mom.
Yeah.
And, I like the battle scene at the end where he's fighting the guy and he keeps telling him to yield. you know. So there were nice glimpses of Timothy Chalamet showing like, hey guys, I can be a leading guy in an action movie if I need
Yes.
to be. And that's the key, because he'd done a lot of great acting roles, but this was like his, you know, one of his first true turns in a blockbuster movie. So for me, just you know, shout out to Timothy Chalamet stepping up as the lead here, and everyone did a great job with what they were given. You know, Stellan Skarsgård, with a name like Skarsgård, of course you're going to
Oh,
bring it, that acting family there. You
yes.
know,
Yeah.
the
You got a
Skarsgård.
Skarsgård in your project, you're good. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but shout out to everybody for making it happen, especially since I found this out about taking the pay cut just to be in this project.
Oh yeah.
You know, but for me, I just wanted to give a little love to Timothy Chalamet as far as, you
Yeah.
know, his role in this movie.
Yeah. And I agree. I think that when the movie was announced and Timothy Chalamet was announced to play the lead of Paul Atreides, it was one of the situations like I've seen bits of him, but not enough. And this was the first time I got to really see him like carry like a major blockbuster film
Right.
with an ensemble cast as well, because it's very easy to get lost in an ensemble cast, especially with a great cast around you like he was surrounded by. And he does a great job. So without a shadow of a doubt, yeah, we got to give Timothy Chalamet some major love and respect. And as you mentioned, the box scene, the scene in the tent is probably my favorite scene with him and his mother. And
Yeah.
he's explaining the visions, and you see the mental toll it's taken on him. It's a great scene. Rebecca Ferguson, man, is a star. She's an absolute
Isn't she?
star. Just like she radiates this amazing energy on screen that, you know, she's very charismatic on screen, man. You can't help but just feel her presence. And she has this great intensity in the film when she needs to. And she also has this great vulnerability in the movie as well. And that sometimes that can be hard for people to balance, to counterbalance, where you have to have really good scenes of vulnerability, be emotional, and also have scenes of sheer intensity and to control the room. And Rebecca Ferguson can absolutely do that. I was introduced to her very late in the game as well. I was introduced to her in the Mission Impossible franchise. That's the first time I kind of was like, oh, who's that? Like, she's great. Greatest Showman. Oh my God, she's great. And then to see her here, I was like, oh my God, Rebecca Ferguson. Like in this movie, up to this point, I've seen her in other movies since then, but up to this point, this was the movie where I was kind of like, everyone pay attention to Rebecca Ferguson, because just as much as, especially in part one, just as much as Timothy Chalamet is essentially carrying the movie as the lead, I would say she's almost just as important in part one as Paul is. She's with him by his side this entire movie. Everything that he's enduring, she's enduring with him. And we get that kind of bond throughout this entire movie. And it's hard to, you know, just not acknowledge how great she is in the movie. Again, the cast is stacked, dude. You got Josh Brolin, you got a Skarsgård, you know what I mean? Like you've got so many people. Oscar Isaac, who is a terrific actor. Absolutely love Oscar Isaac. He's been very busy at this point in time. Like he was everywhere. He was shooting 2 movies at once. You know what I mean? Like it was awesome to see Oscar Isaac here. Again, I was sad to see him go. But terrific actor. But yeah, like I absolutely like gushed for Rebecca Ferguson, just absolutely drawn to the screen whenever she was on. And I think she's just one of those actors that, you know, everyone should be paying attention to. Like if she's not a household name, I don't know what's going on, because she's terrific.
She had already been we'd already seen her in a few movies. Mission Impossible Rogue Nation,
Greatest Showman.
Showman, Life. We saw
Life.
her in.
Oh
Yeah,
my God. She
yep.
was in Life. Yes.
She was in Life. She was in another Mission Impossible movie. I enjoyed her in Doctor Sleep.
Oh my
She
God,
was
dude. Yeah.
great in Doctor Sleep. So she, like you said, she was in a few projects before this, but then this is the one where it was like, oh wow, she was so good in this movie. Like she was stealing scenes.
That's what I'm saying. Like she, in my opinion, she carries the movie just as much as our lead Paul Atreides. Like I'm like, yo, like if you said, Rick, we need you to come up with the post for Dune, but we're only allowed to put 2 characters on Dune. Who are we putting up there? I'm like, oh, you put Paul Atreides and you put Jessica. Like, you get Rebecca Ferguson on this poster, man, because she carries it just as much as he does. You know, where everyone else feels like they're playing, and this is not a negative, but everyone is playing a supporting role to Paul Atreides. Paul Atreides is our guy. Like, he is the character in the movie that we are following. We're learning the most. So everyone else is kind of just playing these pieces to help carry his story. But Jessica is just as strong and pivotal to the story as Paul Atreides, in my opinion, and Rebecca reflects that in her performance.
Yeah, and also just a little shout out to your boy Dave Bautista. He had a couple scenes
Oh,
here and
dude,
there.
listen, Batista. Look, again, Batista's a guy who just wants to work with the best and be a great actor, and anybody else. Whether all right, we'll talk about wrestlers turn actors for a second. Anybody else would have probably fought tooth and nail to have a much significant bigger role, right? We get glimpses of him here, and we get more of him in 2, but we
Right.
just get glimpses of him here, and that's what this movie's doing. It's world building and setting up, and I love that Dave Bautista's here, and just like, listen, I just want to be a part of these great films with great directors, and you know, it's the second time he's worked with Denis Villeneuve. We saw him in Blade Runner 2049, and I hope they continue to work together. I'm a big fan of Bautista. I'm always going to praise that guy.
Yeah. I noticed online a lot of people were excited to see Zendaya, and she was
Yeah.
all over the trailers,
Yep.
all over them. And then you went to see the movie, and then you realize she doesn't really show up till the end.
Yeah, there was so many funny videos of like, where's Zendaya at? You know what I mean? And then she would,
Yeah.
the very end of the movie, and that's it. I'm like, dog, there's a part 2. Don't worry,
Yeah.
there's a part
Exactly.
2.
Exactly. So we're gonna start ending here with our closing thoughts. And for our closing thoughts, I just wanted us to talk about like uh, just the process of the studio here and what they
Mhm,
did with Denis. Um, Clearly, they were ready to give him this movie way before he started doing it, you know.
mhm,
But they trusted him um, by giving him these other movies. You know, the studios. You know, they were
mhm.
just like, I don't know how long Warner Brothers had the rights, you know,
Yeah.
but Warner Brothers was willing to wait until it was time to give him Dune, and they did.
Mhm.
They didn't announce that it was going to be a part 1 and part 2.
Yeah, they didn't.
So I wanted to, um, to talk to you, Ricardo, as far as do you think it would have helped things if they announced that, hey, this is going to be a part 1 of part 2, so you have to see both to get the full story. Should they have left it the way it is? Should they have just announced it from the get-go? How do you think things would have worked out as far as that goes? Because don't get me wrong, when I went to see it, it was a nice surprise.
Yeah.
You know, I walked in the theater and then, you know, there it is, Dune Part 1. I went, oh, that's really cool. And then if you remember, there were rumors that Part 2 might not get made.
Yeah, dude, I was nervous. I was scared, man.
Yeah, you know, and I would like to think that maybe that noise that I made at the Oscars convinced Warner Brothers, hey, listen, it came out during the world situation. It wasn't going to make as much
Mhm.
because of what happened. But how do you think Warner Brothers should have handled this to possibly help Denis with his movie here?
Yeah, it was a scary time. I was nervous for Dune 1 because the previous movie was Blade Runner 2049. As we talked about, box office return wasn't that significant. It didn't do the worst, but it just didn't do as good as I think they had anticipated. So I was a little worried about Dune and what that would mean for everything else. They did make it work. And as you mentioned, like prior to going to see the movie, you don't have any really inclination or idea of it being a part 1 of a part 2, and then, you know, with the box office return again because of everything that was happening in the world and streaming, they're kind of like, oh, are we going to get a sequel? We don't know. um it's interesting when it comes to marketing the film. You know, again, Dune is obviously based off, we have books, we have novels, and it's not something necessarily that everybody has read. Again, I've been told that they could be quite dense and that there's a lot to them. So it's kind of hard to say because I don't know about you, but I definitely know some people that if they're told right off the bat that if a movie, like if right off the bat it would have been called Dune Part 1, there are some people that are more than likely go, well, I'll wait till part 2 is about to come out,
Right.
and then I'll watch part 1 and then part 2. And I've never been that person. Like, I know some people that are like, oh, I don't like hanging on cliffhangers, and I don't like knowing that I'm gonna have to wait. That it's because I remember some people, like, the idea of labeling something part 1, they get that feeling. Like I mentioned, some people feel like, oh, is it going to feel incomplete? I don't want to see an incomplete movie. I'll wait and I'll watch it back to back. So that does happen. But I don't know what Warner Brothers could have done, obviously, because I think the landscape of the world is what affected it the most.
Right.
You know, I think everything that was happening that was essentially out of their control was the biggest hit. So I think that even if they had marketed this movie as Dune Part 1, kind of solidifying, like, hey, don't worry, this is Part 1, like, you're going to get a much bigger story, I don't know what significant change that would have made, because of everything that was happening globally, and, you know, that affected us greatly. I don't know. You brought up a very good point that, you know, the Oscars and everything in award recognition probably is what pushed them in one direction. Because if there's one thing Warner Brothers loves, if it's not a good box office, it's award recognition.
Right.
Warner Brothers is no stranger to that. Warner Brothers, whether it's IP films, whether it's superhero films, you know, we've got Oscar winning Suicide Squad. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Warner Brothers loves that. They absolutely love that. It's one that they love. So if there was anything that kind of protected Dune, I think it might have been that, like, the fact that they got nominated for like 10 Oscars is great, and the fact that they trusted Denis after Blade Runner 2049 to continue with Dune and then go with Dune 2, and now we're in a boat now. We're like, is Dune 3 coming? Like, what do we, like, what's happening? Like, can we get any confirmation? I'm pretty sure it's going to happen. But to answer your question, to be honest with you, I don't know if Warner Brothers could have done anything, whether it was marketing, whether it was announcing from the gate, hey, this is Dune Part 1, it's going to be part of a much bigger story, we're creating a new world building IP for you. I don't know, just because the world was just a very different place then. And even the greatest of greats, Christopher Nolan, you know, with movies like Tenet, had to deal with negative things because of what was happening in the world. So, and Nolan's a guy that never needs to release a trailer, dude, and people are going. So when Nolan's movies are greatly affected by the world, I think it's kind of out of anybody's hand, even the studio. So I don't think there was much they could do, to be honest with you. I think adding anything to this, saying it's going to be part of something much bigger, I don't know what kind of effect that would have had. Positive, negative, there probably would have been a handful of people like, oh, well, if it's part 1 of part 2, I'll wait. And I do think it's a good sign, though, that so many people watched it on streaming, because it did show there was an interest. It did show that there was an interest and positive word of mouth, and people are watching because, look, we'll bring it up too, it's a long movie. It's a long movie. And for many people, I have friends that when they're like, how long is a movie? And I say 2 hours, and they go, and what you mean, and, my boy? 2 hours,
Right.
and I'm like, yeah. And they're like, you know what I mean? But it was streaming, so you could watch an hour, you can take a break, you can come back, watch another hour, you can break it down. So honestly, I think maybe the streaming numbers might have helped it as well. But again, to answer your question, I don't think there was much Warner Brothers could do from a marketing standpoint to help that movie in any way, considering what was happening.
And, you know, Warner Brothers has kind of been hurting for establishing, you know, another franchise, because they hold so many properties, the DC universe being the primary one. They hold the rights to the Matrix universe. I want to say Harry Potter as well.
Harry Potter, yeah, they've been trying to get that Harry Potter franchise kicking again, and now we got a reboot coming.
Yeah. So it was almost like, hey, this is one that, you know, this has so much potential, and thankfully they stuck with Denis, because, you know, Dune Part 2 gets made. Currently, there's a Dune show on HBO Max, and then now Denis talking about doing a Dune Part 3.
Dune 3.
And, you know, because of taking the chance, hopefully, if things continue to be successful, Denis wants it to continue after he leaves. You know, I think he talked about staying on. You know, if Dune 3 gets made, I'll make it, and then I'll, maybe he'll stay on as producer for the future.
Producer, yeah,
And
producer, executive producer, yeah.
but so far, so good. Dune has been established at this like big epic universe. Reviews for the show have been kind of mixed.
Yeah,
And
I haven't seen the show yet, to be honest.
I haven't either. But good on Denis and good on Warner Brothers. It's like, hey, this book has so many fans, has a fan base, and this fan base loves these movies, and science fiction still makes money. People love science fiction, so they found the right director. Such an epic experience.
Oh,
This
yeah,
was
dude.
a wonderful movie. All righty. Folks, that was the Panel Bros official breakdown for Dune. If you could please give us a like, share, and subscribe on YouTube at the Panel Bros, we'd appreciate it. As you know, those likes, shares, and subscribes, they help our reach. If you could also give us a comment below letting us know how you felt about our breakdown for Dune, we'd appreciate that as well. Stick around, folks. Our next breakdown for the Denis Villeneuve filmography is going to be Dune Part 2.
Yes.
So looking forward to bringing you that. For Ricardo Segura, this is Anderson Marchak saying thank you for coming to the panel.